Alright guys, so today I'm just going to kind of do a versus video. I'll compare and contrast just like a bunch of things similar to series that I kind of feel are amazing and are kind of like the fantasy, like it's like we're going to start fantasy, The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, and The Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien. So, two very different series. I mean, a lot of people say like, oh yeah, Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, same thing, right? No, they're very, very different in the high fantasy genre. They're both very mainstream. I mean, I would say the Lord of the Rings is more popular because the movies were more successful. Again, one of my opinions is all the popularity is gonna come from the movie, no matter how good the book is. But I would say that yes, the Lord of the Rings is better than the Chronicles of Narnia, but I'm gonna tell you why and how. Like this, the authors were friends. They were very good friends, and these are both their fantasy series. I feel like C.S. Lewis wasn't a main fantasy author. He didn't write other fantasy other than his kids' fantasy series. But I have so much respect for the Chronicles of Narnia. I love it more than a lot of people do. I know some people aren't big fans of it, and I still think it's an amazing series. Just don't get me wrong. But it's a little bit more aimed for kids. Like, if you can see that. Like, The Lord of the Rings is very easily accessible. A lot of people who don't read fantasy, they can read Lord of the Rings. They have read Lord of the Rings because it's a huge thing. Because of the movies and stuff like that. So it's very easily accessible. But also, it's not children's literature. So that's one difference. Very different. But it's like, it's not children's literature. It's like, it's very brilliant. I want to talk about Lord of the Rings more on this channel. It's a very good series. I have so much respect for the series. And then, because you gotta think about goals, this one is not really aiming. It's aiming for kids, but it did write an amazing series. I love how it just writes every character so well, and he's not very straightforward, but like he tells the stories about the kids, and a very nice just like vibe, and just like go into his world. His world is amazing. It's just as detailed and as complicated as any other world, and it's not just made up. It's not like, I say made up as in like, there's two different kinds of made up. Like, the author goes, hey, this is the story, this is where I want it to take place, this is how everything will take place, this is like a detailed version of his world. And then there's a type when the author is just making stuff up, like, oh, well, this guy, and then like you make up magic, kind of absurdism, but C.S. Lewis is clearly just not making stuff up. This is very planned. My favorite book in this series was The Last Battle. And I love The Last Battle because he brings in so much more of he ties in all of the other stories at the end. And he makes it like such high stakes. Because usually, most Narnia books are just a little battle. But he turns The Last Battle into just high stakes. The villains were the best, like they were the most hated in The Last Battle. Most hated is like good in like a hated villain, and like it's just like, and they all connect to it. And then this is a good series. I love this series. And The Lord of the Rings is just more for adults, but of course, J.R. Tolkien. He's very detailed. It's like not gonna let you down when this happens. The Lord of the Rings. I mean, a better overall series of Lord of the Rings is better, but the world of Narnia is just like something else. One difference is between this and this. This has a connection to the real world. Oh, they go in the secret portal. Because it's a kid's book, they're not gonna understand if it's set in a totally different world. Like, it's kind of just like a little bit of connection, but not that much of a connection because they leave. This one, whole different world. And they were both written about the same time, and they were all friends, obviously. And I would say the writing is pretty similar, but two very different books, two amazing books. I mean, I really think the Chronicles of Narnia gets a pretty bad rap. Like, oh yeah, this is like a kid series. And like that. Like it just kind of portrays religion straightforward. I don't have a problem with that. He can do whatever he wants in his books. It's not our books. So, and Lord of the Rings, granddaddy of fantasy. It's amazing. I still need to talk more about this series. Like, I did a review for each individual book, and a review for the whole book, and I did a review for The Hobbit, and I feel like, oh yeah, I like the books at the time. I love them, and then I love them even more as they sit on me. A lot of times I'm like, wow, I think I reviewed that book too high. Like, yeah, I was just being like little like high, and then a couple of months later or a couple of days later, I'm like, oh yeah, well, this is what's wrong with it. But Lord of the Rings only grows on me, man. It was like, oh yeah, I love that. I miss when I'm reading that, and the characters are, I mean, they're not the strongest. Like Gandalf and Sam, those are the two good characters. Frodo, in my opinion, is pretty basic, but I mean, back then they weren't supposed to be focusing on the. That's not always the trend, not focusing on the characters, but still the character shined. I didn't hate Frodo. I just thought he was a little basic. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just like, and Sam is a great character, just like a very loyal friend. And both of these series are great. I would give 5 stars to both of them. Both started amazing start points for fantasy. So pick one as you want to start. So these are the starts. You can't start from somewhere like the Wheel of Time, and you can't start somewhere. I mean, you could start from the Stormlight Archive, arguably, but probably Mistborn's and one of those series. So 2 amazing series, 2 great reviews for me. Read both of them, please. So these are all obviously more popular series. So see you guys in the next video.